It was a quiet afternoon when the woman found herself stuck on the side of a road, her car refusing to start no matter how many times she tried to turn the key. She had been driving for hours, thinking about the things she needed to do, the errands she had left unfinished when suddenly it all came to a stop. The engine sputtered and died, leaving her stranded in an unfamiliar area. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the street, and she felt the chill of the evening creeping in. Her heart started to race a little as she sat in the driver's seat staring at the dashboard. Everything seemed to be working fine a few minutes ago, so why had the car suddenly given up on her? She sighed, running her fingers through her hair, frustrated with herself for not paying more attention. She had just moved to this town and didn't know anyone well enough to ask for help, nor did she feel comfortable making a call to a tow truck just yet. She glanced around, hoping someone would drive by, maybe someone kind enough to offer assistance. But the road was empty, and the only sound she could hear was the wind brushing through the trees and the faint hum of distant traffic. After a few moments of hesitation, she decided she couldn't sit here all night, waiting for some miracle to happen. She got out of the car and popped the hood, staring down at the engine as if she could magically fix it with her eyes alone. She knew nothing about cars, never had the patience to learn, but she figured she could at least try to look competent. Maybe the issue was something simple, like a loose wire or a flat tire. Still, she felt hopeless. She wasn't the type to ask for help, but today, it seemed like she had no choice. Just as she was about to give up and take out her phone to look up a tow service, a car pulled up behind hers, the tires crunching on the gravel. She turned quickly, her heart lifting a little as she saw a man stepping out of the vehicle. He was tall and well-built, wearing a faded denim jacket, his hands covered in grease, likely from working on his own vehicle. He looked like someone who spent most of his time fixing things, the kind of person who could solve problems with his hands and his mind. "Need a hand?" the man asked, his voice warm and reassuring. For a moment, the woman hesitated, not sure if she should trust this stranger. But something about his calm, friendly demeanor put her at ease. She felt a little embarrassed, but she explained that her car had broken down and she wasn't sure what was wrong. He smiled gently, telling her not to worry. "Let's see what we can do," he said, walking over to the front of the car. He examined the engine. She stood back, still unsure of what to say. There was an awkward silence between them as she fidgeted with her purse, trying to think of something to break the tension. She wasn't used to relying on others for help, but there was something about this man's presence that made her feel a little less alone in the world. "Looks like the battery's dead," he said after a few moments, his voice calm and knowledgeable. "Probably just needs a jump start. You got cables?" She didn't. But before she could say anything, he had already opened the trunk of his car and pulled out a set of jumper cables. "I always carry extras," he said with a smile, as though it was the most normal thing in the world. She watched him closely as he worked, impressed by how quickly he assessed the problem and got to work. His hands moved efficiently, and despite the fact that he was covered in grease, there was a certain ease to the way he handled the situation. He wasn't rushed or stressed, just focused and calm. The woman felt herself relaxing in his presence, something she hadn't done in a long time. There was something about him, something honest and genuine, that made her feel as though everything would be okay. While he worked, the woman couldn't help but ask questions. She found herself curious about the man, not just because he was helping her, but because he seemed so different from the people she had met since moving here. He wasn't like the high-strung professionals she had gotten used to in the city. He didn't seem to be worried about appearances or status, and he didn't care that she was a stranger. He was simply there to help. "What's your name?" she asked a little shyly. "James," he said without looking up, his hands busy as he connected the cables to both cars. "And yours?" "Anna," she replied, feeling a little awkward for not having introduced herself sooner. But he didn't seem to mind. For the next few minutes, she watched him work, trying to ignore the odd feeling that seemed to be growing inside her. She had always been independent, never one to rely on others for help. But there was something about James that made her feel comfortable in a way. His kindness was genuine, and it wasn't something she encountered often. She had been trying to start a new life in this town, but so far, it hadn't been easy. She didn't have many friends, and she wasn't sure how to get to know people here. She had tried to push through it, but moments like this made her realize how lonely she truly felt. Once the cables were hooked up, James started the engine of his car, and soon enough Anna's car sputtered back to life. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding and gave him a thankful smile. "Thank you so much," she said, feeling both relieved and embarrassed. "I don't know what I would have done without you." James gave a small, humble nod, wiping his hands on a rag. "No problem. Just glad I could help." For a moment they just stood there, the sound of the engine running in the background as the air around them seemed to settle into a comfortable silence. Anna didn't want to leave just yet. She wanted to keep talking to him, to learn more about him, but she wasn't sure how to keep the conversation going without seeming too forward. "Is there anything I can do for you in return?" she asked, her voice soft. James shook his head. "Nah, I'm just doing what anyone else would do. Don't worry about it." But Anna wasn't ready to let this moment slip away so easily. She had her reasons for wanting to get close to him, reasons she didn't yet want to admit to herself. She had plans that involved meeting people like him, people with skills and knowledge that could help her navigate her new life in this town. But for now, she simply smiled, grateful for his help, and promised to return the favor if she could ever do something for him in the future. As she drove away, she couldn't stop thinking about James and the way he had made her feel. She didn't know it yet, but this chance encounter would turn into something much more significant, something that would change both of their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. For now, though, Anna had only one thing on her mind. She needed to find a way to get closer to him. The days that followed the breakdown passed by quietly, but the memory of that afternoon with James lingered in Anna's mind longer than she expected. Every time she thought about the way he had helped her without hesitation, a sense of warmth filled her chest. She found herself thinking about him more often than she cared to admit, even though she hadn't given him much thought before their chance encounter. It wasn't just the fact that he had helped her. It was the way he did it so naturally, like it was something he did every day, like kindness was a part of who he was. Anna's mind kept replaying the image of James, his calm demeanor, the way he spoke with a sense of assurance, and how, even covered in grease, he didn't seem bothered at all. He didn't act like he was doing her a favor, as though helping people was just part of his routine. It was strange because in her life, most people always seemed to be in a hurry, caught up in their own worries or focused on their own needs. James, on the other hand, seemed to be in no rush at all. He made her feel as if her little problem with the car mattered, as though it was something worth fixing, not just for the sake of fixing it, but because she mattered too. The next few days were normal, at least on the surface. Anna went about her daily routine, getting used to her new life in the small town. She spent her time unpacking her belongings, visiting the local market, and trying to make a place for herself in a town that still felt unfamiliar. The town was quiet, with narrow streets lined with old houses and shops that had been there for years. The people were friendly, but there wasn't much happening, and it felt like she was always the outsider looking in. Despite the calm of her new surroundings, Anna couldn't shake the feeling of loneliness. She had come to this town to escape her past, to start fresh. She had hoped that by moving away from everything she knew, she would find peace, but instead, she was just surrounded by silence. She hadn't made any real connections yet, and the small talk she had with a few shopkeepers or neighbors didn't fill the empty space inside her. What she really wanted, though she didn't want to admit it, was someone she could trust, someone who could help her navigate her way through this new chapter of her life. She wanted someone who could show her what it meant to belong. That was when she remembered James. She had barely spoken to him, but in the short time they had spent together, she had felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Comfort. She had found herself enjoying their conversation, the way he seemed genuinely interested in helping her and not in anything she could give him in return. That was rare. Most people only cared about what they could get from others. James was different, and she couldn't ignore that. As she went about her days, Anna started to come up with a plan. She didn't want to seem too forward or desperate, but she couldn't deny that she was drawn to him. She knew that if she wanted to spend more time with James, she needed a reason to see him again. It was simple enough. She would just think of a reason to go to the mechanic's shop, maybe even pretend that her car was still having issues. She was good at making excuses, at finding reasons to get close to people. The next time she went to the local shop for groceries, she made sure to stop by the mechanic's place. It wasn't that far from where she lived, and she figured it would be a good chance to see if he was around. She wasn't sure if he would be there, but something told her he would be. Sure enough, as she walked past the open garage doors, she spotted him, bent over an engine, his hands moving quickly as he worked. For a moment, she just stood there watching him from a distance. He was so focused, so immersed in his work, that he didn't even notice her. She felt a bit silly just standing there. But she also felt a strange pull. This was the man who had helped her, the man who had made her feel seen, even if only for a moment. She had to talk to him. Taking a deep breath, Anna walked up to him. When he saw her, he immediately stopped what he was doing and wiped his hands on a rag. "Hey, Anna, what's up?" I was just passing by," she said, trying not to sound too nervous. "I thought I'd stop in and see if you were around." James gave her a small smile. "Well, I'm here. You need something? Car still acting up?" Anna felt her heart skip a beat. She hadn't expected him to remember her car, but he did. That simple recognition made her feel good in a way she hadn't expected. "Oh, no," she quickly said. "It's actually fine. Now, I just thought I'd stop by and, thank you again for helping me. It was really kind of you." "It's no problem," James replied with a casual shrug. "I'm happy I could help." There was a moment of silence, and Anna felt that familiar awkwardness creeping in. What should she say now? She had no reason to be here, no reason to keep the conversation going, but she didn't want it to end just yet. She wasn't ready to walk away. "So, how's work been?" she asked, hoping to keep the conversation going. James glanced around the garage before replying. "Busy. It's been a steady stream of customers, but nothing I can't handle. What about you? Settling in okay?" Anna smiled. She had to admit, there was something comforting about his genuine interest. "I'm getting there. Still adjusting, but I think I'm starting to like it here. It's quiet. In a good way." He nodded. "Yeah, it's a good place for that. Not much excitement, but it's peaceful." They both stood there for a few moments, a silence between them that wasn't uncomfortable. It was as though they were both content in the moment, even though neither of them said much. "Well, I should let you get back to work," Anna said eventually. "I just wanted to check in and say thanks." "Any time," James replied. "You know where to find me if you need anything." As Anna turned to leave, she felt a little disappointed, though she couldn't really explain why. She had gotten what she came for, a little more time with him, a few more moments to talk and feel connected to someone. But it wasn't enough. She knew she'd be back. There was something in her that was telling her this was only the beginning. Walking back to her car, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement mixed with uncertainty. She wasn't sure what her next move should be, but one thing was for certain. She couldn't stop thinking about James. And that, she realized, was exactly what she had been looking for all along. The more Anna thought about James, the more she realized she was drawn to him, not just for the way he had helped her, but for something deeper. There was something about him, something genuine, that she couldn't quite put into words. He wasn't like the men she had known before, the ones who seemed to only care about themselves or about getting something from her. James was different. His kindness wasn't an act, and it wasn't something he was doing for a reward. It was just who he was. Anna's mind began to race with thoughts of how she could spend more time with him. She had never been someone who was good at making friends or building relationships. Her past had been filled with people who only wanted her for what she could do for them, and she had become accustomed to putting up walls. But with James, things felt different. She felt as if she could trust him, even though they didn't know each other well. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she wanted something from him, not in the way she usually wanted things, whether it was money, power, or connections, but something simpler. She wanted to feel a sense of belonging, something that had been missing from her life for a long time. She wanted to feel like she wasn't just drifting through life alone. And James, with his quiet strength and unassuming kindness, felt like the kind of person who could offer that. But Anna also knew something important. She couldn't just ask for what she wanted. She had to find a way to make him want to spend time with her, to see her as more than just a stranger who needed help. She had to figure out a way to get close to him without making it seem too obvious. She couldn't rush things. She had to be careful. Her plan began to take shape slowly, step by step. It started small. She began to visit his shop more often, casually stopping by whenever she had an excuse. Sometimes it was to check in on her car, even though she knew there was nothing wrong with it. Other times it was just to chat, to ask about the work he was doing, or to make small talk about life in the town. Each time she visited, she made sure to be friendly, engaging, and approachable. James didn't seem to mind. He welcomed her visits with a smile, and their conversations, though brief, became more relaxed over time. They talked about their favorite, local spots, the best places to eat, and the little things that made this small town unique. He was always polite and kind, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding back, just a little. He wasn't being distant, but he wasn't being overly warm either. He was friendly, but he didn't seem to let her into his world. Anna couldn't blame him for being cautious. She understood that. After all, they had only met once before, and they were still strangers to each other. But as the days went by, she began to wonder if he was simply being polite out of habit, or if he was genuinely interested in getting to know her. And if he was interested, why hadn't he made a move? Why hadn't he invited her out for a coffee or a drink? At first, Anna told herself that she wasn't expecting anything. She wasn't trying to rush into a friendship or anything more. But as she continued to visit him, something inside her began to change. She started to want more from him, and it wasn't just about being around him. She wanted him to see her as someone worth getting to know. She wanted him to understand that she wasn't just another woman passing through his life, that she had depth, that there was more to her than the casual conversations they had shared so far. One afternoon, as Anna was walking toward the mechanic's shop, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. She had been thinking about James all morning, wondering if this would be the day things would finally click. Her plan had been subtle so far, nothing too obvious. But today, she felt like it was time to take a step forward. It wasn't a big step, just a small one, but it was something. She had been waiting for the right moment, and today seemed like the day. When she arrived at the shop, James was busy working on a car, his back to her as he leaned over the engine. Anna hesitated for a moment before walking over to him. She didn't want to interrupt his work, but she knew this was her chance to strike up a conversation that went beyond just small talk. "Hey, James," she called out, her voice light and casual. He turned around, flashing a quick smile when he saw her. "Hey, Anna, what's up?" "I was just thinking about grabbing some lunch," she said, trying to sound casual but feeling a little nervous. "I've been meaning to try that new cafe down the street. Would you want to join me?" It was simple enough, but it felt like a big step for Anna. She had never been one to make the first move, especially with someone she barely knew. But something told her that if she wanted things to move forward, she had to take the initiative. James seemed to pause for a moment, his face unreadable. Anna's heart skipped a beat. Had she been too forward? Was he going to turn her down? "I've actually got a lot of work to catch up on today," he said after a beat, and Anna's stomach dropped. "But thanks for the invite. Maybe another time?" Anna forced a smile, trying to hide her disappointment. "Sure, no problem. Another time." She turned to leave, but before she could take a full step away, James called out to her. "Wait, Anna." She turned back around, her heart racing. "Yeah?" He scratched his head awkwardly, looking a little embarrassed. "Actually, if you don't mind, I'd love to join you. I could use a break." Relief washed over her, and she couldn't help but smile. "Really? That'd be great. James grinned, and for the first time, Anna saw a hint of warmth in his eyes. Yeah, let's go. I'm sure I could use a good meal. As they walked to the cafe together, Anna couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building inside her. She wasn't sure what would come of this moment, but she felt like it was a step in the right direction. She had taken a chance, and, for the first time in a long while, it felt like it might pay off. The cafe was small but cozy, with mismatched furniture and the smell of freshly baked bread filling the air. They ordered their food and sat down at a small table by the window. The conversation flowed easily, and Anna felt a sense of relief as the walls between them started to crumble. She learned more about James during their lunch than she had in all the previous visits combined. He told her about growing up in the town, about his family, and about his love for fixing things. For a while, they just enjoyed each other's company, laughing over silly stories and talking about everything, and nothing at all. As they ate, Anna realized something important. This wasn't just about getting closer to him anymore. It was about finding a connection that was real, something that went beyond her original plans. She wasn't just trying to get close to James. For the sake of it, she actually enjoyed being with him, and that made all the difference. The days following their lunch together were filled with a strange, new excitement for Anna. She had never felt such a connection with someone so quickly, yet the more time she spent with James, the more she felt herself wanting to know him even better. The ease of their conversations, the shared laughter, and the way he listened to her, everything about their time together felt comfortable and natural. It was as if they had known each other for years, even though they had only just begun to truly talk. James, for his part, seemed to be enjoying the time they spent together as well. Their casual outings, sometimes to the local cafe, other times just walking through the town, were filled with the kind of moments that made Anna feel like maybe, just maybe, this small town wasn't so lonely after all. She began to feel like she had found a friend in him, someone who was genuinely interested in her as a person, not just as a woman needing help with her car. But despite the growing closeness between them, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. She couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, but there was a sense of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. She had always been good at hiding her true intentions, even from herself. But now, as she spent more time with James, it became harder to ignore the fact that she had an agenda. She hadn't been entirely honest with him. While their friendship was genuine to some extent, a part of her still wanted more from him. She wasn't just looking for a connection, though that was part of it. What she truly wanted was to figure out a way to move forward in her life, to find a place where she truly belonged. And in her mind, James was the key to that. As the weeks passed, Anna started to notice subtle things about James that made her wonder whether he felt the same way about her. There were moments when she caught him looking at her a little longer than usual, a flicker of something in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. Other times when they were talking, she could sense a shift in his tone, a change in the way he listened to her, as though he was considering something more than just the conversation at hand. Still, he never took that extra step. He never suggested they do anything outside of their casual meetings. It was as though he enjoyed their time together, but wasn't sure how to move things forward. This left Anna feeling confused. Did he like her? Or was he just being kind? One evening, after a particularly long day of errands and work, Anna found herself walking past James's shop. It was late, the sky tinged with deep purple and orange as the sun set behind the town's modest buildings. She was tired, but couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to see him, to talk to him, to figure out where they stood. She had been thinking about their last conversation, where they had joked about things but also shared a few more personal details than usual. The thought of seeing him again brought a mix of excitement and nervousness. She pushed open the door to his shop, the familiar jingle of the bell above the door ringing softly in the still air. James looked up from the workbench, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Anna, what's up?" "Hey, James," she said, trying to sound casual but unable to completely mask the flutter in her chest. "I was just in the area, thought I'd stop by." "Good timing," he said with a grin. I'm about to close up, but if you've got a minute, you're welcome to hang out. She nodded, feeling a bit shy but also eager to spend some time with him. She moved toward a small bench near the work area and sat down, glancing around at the cluttered space. It was filled with tools, spare parts, and cars in various stages of repair. There was a comfort to the way things were organized yet chaotic, just like James seemed to be, steady but with a touch of unpredictability. I'm glad you stopped by, he said, wiping his hands on a rag as he walked over to join her. He seemed genuinely happy to see her, and it made Anna's heart skip a beat. Maybe, she thought, maybe he did feel something too. They spent the next few minutes chatting about small things, how his day had gone, the latest car repairs he had worked on, and what they both had planned for the weekend. But as the conversation continued, Anna began to notice that there was something different in the air tonight. There was a tension between them, a quiet undercurrent that neither of them was acknowledging, but both could feel. Every now and then, their eyes would meet and Anna could see a flicker of something in James's gaze. Was it hesitation? Or maybe longing? She couldn't quite tell. Finally, after a long pause, she decided to address the feeling that had been growing inside her. James, she started, her voice a little more serious than usual. I've been meaning to ask you something. He looked up, his brow furrowing slightly. Sure, what's on your mind? Anna hesitated for a moment. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had to be careful. She didn't want to scare him off, but she also couldn't keep pretending that everything was just casual between them. She took a deep breath and tried to steady her nerves. I've been thinking, she said slowly, about the time we've spent together. And I just wanted to know, what do you think of me? I mean, are we just friends or is there something more? The question hung in the air, and for a long moment James didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on her, his expression unreadable. Anna felt her heart race in her chest. Had she asked too much? Had she gone too far? Finally, James sighed and sat down next to her, running a hand through his hair. Honestly, Anna, he said quietly, I've been trying to figure that out myself. Anna's stomach tightened. What did that mean? Was he confused? Or was he just not interested? I like spending time with you, he continued. And I think you're a great person. But I also know that we come from different worlds. I don't want to rush anything or lead you on if I'm not sure about where things are going. Anna felt a lump in her throat. This wasn't what she had expected. She had hoped he would say something that would make everything clear, but instead, it felt like he was pulling back. The uncertainty in his words mirrored the uncertainty in her heart. I understand, she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. I just wanted to know where I stood with you. I don't want to be in the dark. James nodded. I get that, and I'm sorry if I've made you feel uncertain. They both sat there in silence for a while, neither one of them knowing what to say next. It was a moment of quiet vulnerability, and Anna realized that maybe, just maybe, James was feeling the same thing she had been feeling all along, a mixture of hope and hesitation, wanting to move forward but not knowing how. The silence between Anna and James in the small garage seemed to stretch on for what felt like hours. Both of them sat there, lost in their thoughts. Anna's mind was racing, her heart still pounding from the vulnerability she had just shown. She had asked the question she had been avoiding for weeks, but now, hearing James's response, she wasn't sure what to make of it. I understand, she said quietly, trying to hold back the mix of emotions rising inside her. I just wanted to know where I stood with you. I don't want to be in the dark. James let out a deep sigh and ran a hand through his hair, clearly troubled. I get it. I do. I've just been, I don't know. I guess I've been hesitant. Because I don't want to rush things. I don't want to get your hopes up if I'm not sure about what's happening between us. Anna nodded slowly. It wasn't the response she had been hoping for, but it was honest. It was clear that James was still unsure about how he felt. She understood that. It was the same uncertainty she had been feeling for weeks. The last thing she wanted was to push him into something he wasn't ready for. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore the growing feelings she had for him. She didn't want to walk away from this connection, not when it felt like there was something real between them. "I get it," she repeated, her voice soft. I've never been very good at waiting. I tend to act on what I feel, and sometimes that gets me into trouble." James chuckled lightly, though it didn't fully mask the tension in his voice. "I can see that. But Anna, I don't think it's a matter of waiting, it's just figuring things out. I think we're both figuring things out, and rushing into things could make things harder than they need to be." Anna thought about his words carefully. She had spent so much time trying to move things forward, thinking that the faster they moved, the easier it would be to find the connection she was looking for. But maybe James was right. Maybe they needed to take their time, not just to figure out what they wanted, but also to make sure they were on the same page. Relationships weren't about rushing to the finish line. They were about building something, steady and strong, brick by brick. She realized that maybe she had been too focused on getting somewhere instead of just enjoying the moments they shared. "I guess I've just been so eager to find something real," Anna said quietly, her eyes downcast. "It's been a while since I felt like I could trust someone, you know, and I really trust you." There was a long pause as James processed her words. She wasn't sure if he understood completely, but she hoped he did. What she was saying wasn't just about him, it was about her too. It was about her own struggles with trust and the way she had learned to rely on herself for so long. The thought of letting someone else in had always been hard, but with James, it felt different. She felt safe in his presence, and that meant more to her than she had realized. After what felt like an eternity, James spoke again, his voice softer this time. "I'm glad you trust me, Anna, I really am. I think trust is important. More important than anything else, really. And I don't want to break that trust." The sincerity in his words made Anna's chest tighten. She could see how much he cared, even if he wasn't ready to dive into something serious right away. And though it wasn't the easy answer she had hoped for, it was the honest one. James wasn't pushing her away, but he was also being careful, taking his time to make sure he understood what he wanted. That was something she could respect. "I don't want to rush either," Anna said, her voice steady now. "Maybe we're both just scared of what happens next, but I don't want to lose what we have because we're both afraid of moving forward." James looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "I don't think we're going to lose anything. We're just figuring it out, and I think that's okay." Anna smiled faintly, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, and neither did James, but they were both willing to take things one step at a time. That was enough for her. It wasn't the certainty she had expected, but it was the reality of the situation. And maybe that was what mattered most. "I guess we just need to be honest with each other," she said, looking up at him. "That's all I want. No pretending, no guessing, just being real." James nodded. "I can do that. And I think you're right. No guessing, no pretending, just being real." For the first time in what felt like weeks, Anna felt a sense of peace. She had been holding on to a version of the relationship she thought she wanted, but now she realized that it was more important to let things unfold naturally. She wasn't going to force anything. She wasn't going to rush. She was going to let things happen at their own pace, with the understanding that whatever happened, it would be built on trust and honesty. They sat there for a few more minutes, talking about other things, life in the town, their favorite books, and their plans for the future. The weight that had been hanging over them earlier seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet understanding. It was as though they had both taken a deep breath and let go of the pressure they had been putting on themselves. Eventually, Anna stood up, stretching her arms above her head. "Well, I should probably get going. I've got some things to do before tomorrow." James stood up as well, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Yeah, me too. But I'm glad we talked. It's been a long time coming." Anna smiled, feeling a sense of relief she hadn't felt in a long time. "Me too. I'm glad we're figuring this out." As she walked to the door, she turned back to him, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "Thanks, James. For being honest with me. Anytime, he said with a small smile. Take care, Anna. With that, Anna left the shop, her steps feeling lighter. She didn't have all the answers, and she wasn't sure where things with James would go. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. They were on the right path, whatever that path might be. And maybe, just maybe, that was all that mattered.